In the tumultuous waters of the 17th century, one pirate's name rose above all others: Henry Every. His journey from a naval officer to a pirate is a tale of rebellion and mystery. Leading one of the richest heists ever taken by a pirate, he became the target of one of the first worldwide manhunts. Our story begins in 1659 in the west of England, near Plymouth in Devonshire. A young Henry Every, with dreams larger than the shores of his birthplace, finds his calling upon the untamed oceans. In the waning years of the 17th century, amidst the 9 Years' War, Henry Every embarked on his maritime career with the Royal Navy. His was a quest supporting the Grand Alliance aimed at curtailing the ambitions of Louis XIV. In his early 30s, Every found his place amongst the crew of the HMS Rupert, a formidable vessel armed with 64 guns under the stewardship of Sir Francis Wheeler. As the year 1689 unfolded, Every climbed up the ranks and was promoted to master's mate after helping the Rupert capture a large French convoy off Brest, France. Within the next year, he was invited to join Captain Wheeler on a new ship, the massive 90-gun HMS Albemarle. It was likely that aboard the Albemarle, Every fought in the Battle of Beachy Head against the French, an engagement which ended disastrously for the English. By the end of that summer, Every would be discharged from the Royal Navy. Following his departure from the Royal Navy in 1691, Every became a cog in the machine that was the triangular trade. Under the employ of Bermuda's royal governor, he engaged in the grim trade of enslaved Africans, ferrying them from the Guinean coast to the Americas. Within a brief span, Every's brutal tactics in the slave trade drew the attention of his peers. He cunningly baited fellow traders with the pretense of friendship, only to trap them and their captives in the confines of his ship. Captain Thomas Phillips, a fellow slave trader, wrote in his journal that, "I have nowhere upon the coast met the Negroes so shy as here, which makes me fancy they have had tricks played them by such blades as Long Ben, alias Avery, who have seized them and carried them away." Phillips also highlighted Every's peculiar appointment to the slave trade by a royal governor, an appointment that came to an abrupt end when the governor was dismissed for misconduct. Henry Every's time as a pirate started at Mayo, the easternmost of the Cape Verde's Sotavento Islands. His initial foray into piracy involved the plundering of provisions and supplies from 3 English merchant ships. Demonstrating his persuasive prowess, Every convinced 9 of these ships' crewmen to cast their lot with him, swelling his ranks to approximately 94 souls. Such recruitment feats became a hallmark of his strategy. Venturing next to the Guinean coast, Every cunningly enticed a chieftain aboard his ship, the Fancy, with the guise of trade, only to rob him and his followers, leaving them slave. His journey continued along the African coast to Bioko in the Bight of Benin, where the Fancy received upgrades and enhancements, rendering it one of the fastest ships sailing the Atlantic. By the end of 1694, the Fancy had overpowered 2 Danish privateers near Principe, seizing ivory and gold and gaining 17 Danish defectors. By early next year, after navigating around the Cape of Good Hope, Every's crew made a pit stop in Madagascar to resupply. Here, they took a moment to rest, replenish their provisions, and commandeered a French pirate vessel that happened by incorporating about 40 of its pirates into their crew. With these new additions, Every's force burgeoned to roughly 150 men. In 1695, Henry Every charted a course for the volcanic Perim Island, lying in wait for a lucrative opportunity. An Indian fleet, rumored to carry wealth unparalleled in Asia, possibly the globe. Capturing this fleet promised the spoils of the most lucrative pirate raid ever conceived. By August of that year, the Fancy navigated into the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, aligning Every with 5 other predatory vessels: the Amity, Portsmouth Adventure, Dolphin, Pearl, and Susanna. This alliance elevated Every to the helm of a formidable pirate armada, commanding a force of over 440 pirates. Their target was a majestic convoy of 25 Grand Mughal ships, among them the behemoth Ganj-i-Sawai, boasting 80 cannons and a crew of 1,100, and its escort, the even more massive Fateh Muhammad, armed with 94 cannons and carrying 800 souls. As these treasures of the Mughal fleet sailed through the straits towards Surat, they momentarily slipped past the pirate watch in the cover of night. Yet, undeterred, Every and his flotilla set off in relentless pursuit. The Dolphin, hindered by its sluggish pace, quickly became a liability, trailing far behind the convoy. In a decisive move, it was set ablaze. The Amity and Susanna also faced challenges. The Amity lagged, ultimately failing to rejoin the flotilla, while the Susanna met its demise in a skirmish with a Mughal ship. A few days into the pursuit, the Fancy, along with the Pearl and Portsmouth Adventure, successfully closed in on the Mughal Leviathan. This trio of pirate ships, undeterred by the losses of their companions, prepared to engage in what promised to be a monumental battle. The Ganj-i-Sawai stood as a formidable adversary, armed with 80 cannons and guarded by 400 musketeers, in addition to carrying 600 passengers. However, the battle's tide turned when Every's initial cannon fire struck true, crippling the ship's mainmast and halting its escape. As the Fancy pulled up close, an initial barrage of musket fire from the Indian defenders temporarily held the pirates at bay. The situation escalated when one of the Ganj-i-Sawai's cannons malfunctioned and detonated, causing immediate casualties among its crew and throwing them into disarray, with some attempting to extinguish the flames that had begun to spread. Every seized this moment of chaos, quickly scaling Ganj-i-Sawai's steep sides. What followed was an intense close-quarters combat, lasting nearly 3 hours, with Every and his pirates fighting relentlessly to overcome their opponents. During the raid on the Ganj-i-Sawai, its captain retreated below deck, arming the enslaved women to defend against Henry Every and his pirates. Despite hours of fierce but disorganized resistance, the ship ultimately surrendered. According to Kafi Khan, an Indian historian of the period, the conquerors brutally tortured and executed many captives over several days, instilling terror throughout the vessel. The remaining survivors were set adrift on their now barren ship to return to India. The bounty seized from the Ganj-i-Sawai. The Mughal fleet's jewel was staggering, valued between 200,000 and 600,000 pounds, including $500,000 in gold and silver coins. This haul possibly marked it as the most lucrative pirate plunder in history. The Mughal emperor responded to the loss of wealth by threatening the British government that he would attack British interests in India. He began by imprisoning all British traders in Surat and threatened to proceed to more drastic measures if the pirates were not more actively pursued. As it turned out, some of these traders were so harshly treated, they died in prison. The Mughals' fury brought tremendous pressure on the East India Company, who, concerned at the threat to trade interests, put a bounty on Every's head. The British government had already offered a £500 reward for each member of Every's pirate crew captured. When the East India Company later doubled that reward to £1,000, the first worldwide manhunt in recorded history was underway. After slipping through the nets of capture, the pirates embarked on a journey first to São Tomé, then charting a course to the Caribbean. It was here, in the spring of 1696, that they decided to part ways. The Fancy fell into the hands of the Bahamas governor through a shady deal. Yet, despite offering a hefty sum, they couldn't convince the governor of Jamaica to extend them a royal pardon, an authority he did not possess. Legend has it that Henry Every ventured to Rhode Island before making his final voyage across the Atlantic, returning to Devon, England, where it all began. According to legend, Every returned laden with diamonds and spoils from his high seas adventures. However, his fortune took a dark turn when a deceitful middleman cheated him out of his treasure. Trapped in a cruel twist of fate, Every found himself forced to live in shadows and poverty. Speaking out against the swindler would risk revealing his true identity to the authorities. Over the following 2 decades, whispers of the infamous English pirate's presence in England stirred the air, yet none could be proven true. His end remains shrouded in mystery. What is certain is that he was one of the very few well-known pirates to escape the hangman's noose or death in action, leaving behind a tale as elusive as the man himself.